The new battle mechanic for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet has finally been announced, so I thought it would be fun to look back and rank all of the mechanics we've gotten so far from a competitive standpoint. To be clear, I'm only focusing on the gimmicks that Pokemon has advertised to draw people into the new generation. So, Mega Evolution, Z-Moves, Dynamax, and Terastallization, which is destined to be misspelled for years to come. I'll give my general thoughts on Terastallization at the end of the video, but it doesn't feel right to rank it with the others until I've actually used it. If you would be interested in seeing how I'd rank every new mechanic introduced in Pokemon, like breeding or abilities, let me know in the comments. I know you're all dying to see how I think baby Pokemon stack up against regional variants. Let's just say one of them eats the other one for breakfast, and it's not mashed up into tiny pieces. Today's video is sponsored by Factor. Factor is a meal delivery service that delivers fresh, never frozen meals directly to your doorstep. As many of you know, Pokemon is a very time-consuming game, and sometimes when I'm resetting for Zero Attack IV Legendary Pokemon, I don't always want to stop to cook a whole meal. Factor makes things super convenient, letting meals come together in minutes. As a vegetarian, I also appreciate that Factor has a variety of options that fit my specific diet, and there's lots of options for other dietary restrictions as well. It's also a great way to avoid eating fast food or ordering in, if that's something you're trying to cut back on. Factor's chef-prepared meals take the guesswork out of eating well, so you never have to opt for something that isn't good for you. Factor meals arrive pre-prepared and ready to eat in 2 minutes or less, even faster than ordering in. Meal plans offer variety, with a rotating weekly menu of more than 27 meal options and more than 33 add-ons like smoothies, desserts, and more. Use my link or go to go.factor75.com and use code POGWolfey130 for $130 off across 6 boxes. Alright, let's jump into today's topic. In dead last, Z-Moves. Alright, that's it. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Bye-bye. No, I'm just kidding. Well, not about Z-Moves. I realized how much I hate Z-Moves, and honestly, I never want to think about them ever again. Z-Moves were just a huge source of anxiety for me during their era of competitive Pokemon. For one, you would never know which one of your opponent's Pokemon was holding a Z-Crystal or which Z-Crystal they had. Kartana, for instance, would usually hold a Fighting or Grass Z-Crystal, but it could also be Choice Band, Focus Sash, Assault Vest, or even an HP restoring berry. You really wouldn't know until a few turns in, and by then, it could be too late. Combining that with its Beast Boost ability, and this little piece of paper could steamroll your entire team. The only way to combat a Z-move was to protect or switch into a Pokemon that's immune to that attack, but that would require an insane amount of foresight or, frankly, just luck. You can imagine how nerve-wracking this would be on a stage with hundreds of thousands of people watching you, especially if you didn't even know if your opponent's Pokemon had the Z-Crystal in the first place. Every match felt like deal or no deal. One of the core issues with Z-Moves in general was that across the board, they just did too much damage. Comparing it to Dynamax, where moves get, on average, about 1.5 times stronger, unless they're really strong, in which case they get less, Z-Moves were basically doubling the base power of the average move. So even Pokemon that resisted the Z-move could easily take 50% or more by switching into it. Because of this, Z-moves were really hard to play defensive against, since you really only had 3 options: protect, switch, or let your Pokemon die. But what about Z-moves that were defensive themselves? The Z versions of moves that didn't do damage mostly had pretty interesting effects, such as raising a Pokemon's stats, boosting its critical hit ratio, or even redirecting attacks to the user. For example, Z Conversion allowed Porygon Z to raise all of its stats by 1 stage, and turn its typing into normally electric. I'm almost certain they only did this because its name is Porygon Z. Z Trick Room would not only reverse the turn order, but it would also increase accuracy. I myself used this with Bronzong to make Hypnosis more accurate and make my opponents go night-night. Another fun Z move was Z Destiny Bond. This move would make every attack hit the user, with the idea being that it would knock it out and bring the opponent down too. It was basically Follow Me and Destiny Bond at the same time. I actually brought Z Destiny Bond Mimikyu with Snorlax to Worlds. It was a really cool strategy because you could use Z Destiny Bond and Belly Drum in the same turn, protecting Snorlax. Then next turn, while Destiny Bond was still active, you could protect and use Trick Room. And if the opponent tried to stop Trick Room by knocking out Mimikyu, they would be KO'd as well. Clever, right? Well, if your opponent didn't attack that turn, then you basically wasted your Z move. Wasting your Z move would happen all the time, and though it wouldn't immediately lose you the game, it would put you really far behind. When your Z move can have up to 200 base power, you really don't want to waste it. So not only are you worried about getting hit by one of these things, you're also worried about whether or not you can even land your own. And sometimes your Pokemon who is holding a Z Crystal will get knocked out before you could even use it. By now, I imagine you're picturing two very nervous kids hunched over their 3DSs, jittering in silence. Every cell in my body was vibrating. Whatever picture you have in your head, I assure you that's exactly how it looked during every battle. Let me paint another picture for you, Bob Ross style. Here's a beautiful sunset shining through a gap in the leaves of a whispering forest. You're peeking through and feeling the breeze cooled by the river below. Now, throw that away and burn it. Z-moves were an abomination. Before we talk about our next gimmick, let's talk about another abomination. My subscriber ratio. Most of the people watching my videos aren't subscribed, so I've come to bargain. If you, my beloved viewer, subscribe to the channel, I will eat a banana. With such a tempting offer, I'm confident I will hit 1 million subscribers today. Anyway, back to the video. Next up is Mega Evolution. Megas are definitely better in that they don't turn me into a ball of sweat and anxiety, but they're arguably worse for the metagame. To begin with, there were only 28 Pokemon that could Mega Evolve. Later, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire would add 20 more, bringing the total up to 48. To make matters worse, only about 10 of those 48 were ever even possible to be good, and only 5 of them were consistently good. If you picked anything outside of those 5, you'd be at a huge disadvantage. This extremely small pool of Pokemon really limited your options when you were building a team. At least with Mega Evolution, you knew which Pokemon were capable of it and which of them would likely do it. Of course, there's always the chance that a Pokemon wasn't holding a Mega Stone, but come on. You see a Kangaskhan, you know it's Mega Evolving. The increase in stats plus a new ability were too good to pass up. Being able to change your Pokemon's type, stats, and ability with the press of a button is inherently cool. What about Z-moves is cool? You do a TikTok dance and your Pokemon gets more powerful? Please. Mega Evolving is sick. It also allowed for more creative defensive plays, or at least a way to relieve some of the pressure off your team. For instance, if you knew your Altaria was going to be hit by a super effective Dragon-type move, you could Mega Evolve it and become completely immune to that attack. Obviously, this would be a pretty dumb play on your opponent's part, but you're also dumb for using Altaria in the first place. Unfortunately, there are a lot of bad Mega Evolutions. Take Beedrill and Blaziken's Mega, for example. Beedrill, bad Pokemon, right? Well, what if we raised its attack like a lot, gave it adaptability so its stab was increased, and kept its defense stats the same? Okay, cool. What about its speed, though? Well, we'll raise it, but not enough to outspeed, like, I don't know, Jolly Landorus T holding a Choice Scarf? Well, then what's the point? One look from Landorus and Beedrill will immediately combust. Mega Beedrill has a defense stat of 40, and it's still a bug type, the worst type in the game. With Pokemon like Heatran and Thundurus being used by over a quarter of all players, Beedrill will probably only get a single move in before it gets KO'd. With such bad defense stats, it's just not worth wasting your Mega Evolution on it. And this sort of thing applies to so many other Megas. There's even cases where it's better not to Mega Evolve your Pokemon. Blaziken's Mega Evolution is notoriously worse than its non-Mega form holding a Life Orb. Mega Blaziken just looks cooler. The new designs are really hit or miss for me. I do really like some of them, but others are a bit strange. Why does it look like Gyarados and Swampert both missed Leg Day? Either way, I like that the designs aren't permanent. The ones that really shine, like Charizard X and Rayquaza, make for great entrances once they Mega Evolve. In hindsight, I also like that the transformation animations aren't that long. Whoa, transformation animation. That's fun to say. The cutscenes for Z-moves were so long, you could literally set your 3DS down and go get a whole meal. Not only that, but some of them were just horrendously animated. And to top it off, they weren't skippable. Like, seriously, what were they thinking? Okay, sorry, I have to stop talking about Z-moves. Finally, we have Dynamax. I know this might disappoint some of you, but when it comes to competitive Pokemon, Dynamax is the healthiest and most balanced of the three. And better yet, it allows for more strategy and team building opportunities. To a lot of casual players, Dynamax is simply Pokemon get big. But to me, Dynamax is like a game within a game within a game. There's so many factors to consider by just clicking this button. Dynamaxing your Pokemon doubles your health, raises the power of your attacks, and gives all of your attacks a secondary effect. You would think the more complicated this gets, the more annoying it would be for competitive players, but I honestly believe Game Freak knocked it out of the park with this one. Because you can Dynamax any Pokemon without having to waste your held item slot, a lot more Pokemon have become competitively viable. Dynamax made offensive Pokemon more bulky and bulky Pokemon more offensive. and the 3-turn limit actually gave you a chance to stall it out. Of course, you are going to take some damage if you're trying to stall out a Dynamax Pokemon, but given that you can Dynamax your own Pokemon, it's not a huge deal. One of the things that I personally really like about Dynamax is how flexible it is. With Mega Evolution and Z-moves, you only had 1 or sometimes maybe 2 options each battle for using your special mechanic. This means that if you got, I don't know, KO'd by a surprise attack or something went a little awry, you probably wouldn't be able to use the mechanic, or at least to its full potential. With Dynamax, you're able to be really flexible on the fly. Maybe I go into a battle expecting to Dynamax my Charizard, but if I find myself in a position where Dynamax Groudon or, I don't know, Incineroar could win the game, I'm able to make that adjustment mid-game. I think this allows for a much higher skill ceiling than something like Z-moves or Mega Evolution. Unlike Z-moves that felt nearly unpredictable and Mega Evolution that lasted the entire match, Dynamax is fair to both players. It's even possible to avoid taking any damage for all 3 turns if you get the stars to align. If this happened to me, I'd honestly just praise my opponent for playing so well. I do think that Dynamax isn't perfect though. There's a couple oversights, let's say. One is Life Orb. Life Orb is designed for a game without Dynamax. It makes your moves 30% stronger and you lose 10% of your HP. Now, in Dynamax, you're basically only giving up 5% of your HP, which is a massive difference. In 3 attacks, you would only lose 15% rather than almost a third of your health. Also, that 30% increase is way too strong given that Dynamax moves already make your attacks stronger. The items Choice Band and Choice Specs, which make your moves 50% stronger, don't work with Dynamax, probably because they would be overpowered. Also, the moves Max Knuckle and Max Ooze, which raise your physical and special attack respectively, have a lower base power than other Max moves to stop them from being too strong. This should also have been applied to Max Airstream, which is the single strongest Max move in the game. The main other complaint I have about Dynamax is that the animations take way too long. Oh, I get to say it again. The transformation animation is just a bit too long. With Dynamax also comes Gigantamax, the alternate Dynamax forms of Pokemon, each with their own signature move. These moves also have a secondary effect, but similar to Mega Evolution, Gmax moves were not all created equal. Gmax Vocalith and Gmax Wildfire did a ton of damage when they hit, and then chipped away a sixth of both opponents' HP for 4 turns. Gmax Resonance does damage and then sets up Aurora Veil. Gmax Tartness, however, decreases opposing Pokemon's evasion. Do you know how many times in my competitive Pokemon career I've used a move that decreases my opponent's Pokemon's evasion? 0. It doesn't really help that a lot of Pokemon they gave Gmaxes to aren't competitively viable to begin with. Really, it's more of a cool novelty, so I won't fault it too much. And all the new designs rule. So at least they've got that going for them. One aspect I don't like is how it forces you to use the Gmax move instead of the regular Max move. You can always just not feed it Gmax Soup, I guess, but there are some Gmax Pokemon that are better than their regular Dynamax variants. What if I want to use Gmax Vine Lash one turn and then Max Overgrowth the next? I don't know, maybe it's just a balancing thing. I just realized Gmax Soup probably sounds strange to those who haven't played Sword and Shield. Yes, Gmax Soup is a thing and it sounds disgusting. There's also Dynamax Candy, but that sounds pretty good. As I said at the beginning of the video, I don't feel comfortable ranking Terastallization among the other gimmicks until I use it. Right now, it's looking like it probably won't make as many Pokemon competitively viable as Dynamax did, but it'll definitely do better than Mega Evolution and Z-moves. I'm sure a lot of the Paldea region's Pokemon will be designed with this mechanic in mind. We know Titan is a pure Ice type. If we change its typing to Water, for example, the Rock and Fire Pokemon that used to do super effective damage to it now completely lose their advantage. I also see a way in which this could break the metagame. It's this guy right here. Tyranitar has a horrible typing and still manages to dominate early metas because of its insane stats. If we change its type, it might just gain sentience and take control of your game. There's also Shedinja, which I probably don't need to tell you could be a massive problem, but I can't imagine Game Freak puts it in the game. As you can see, Pokemon with good stats and bad typing are going to benefit immensely via Terastallization. Those with poor to average stats probably won't get much out of it. That's not to say they won't get anything. Changing your type allows you to play defensively as well, but it will likely require some prediction. What if you Terastallize too early? You could lose your one Terastal Pokemon if your opponent just hits it with a different super effective move. If you predict correctly, you just saved your Pokemon for another turn and possibly the rest of the match. Your opponent is choice locked into ground type attacks. If you have a Pokemon that can Terastallize into a flying type, you just won the game. The reason I'm hopeful for Terastallization is that, similar to Dynamax, it doesn't require an item and any Pokemon can use it on the fly. I think this should mean that it has a pretty high skill ceiling when it comes to actually using it. So that's my ranking of the gimmicks we have so far. Sorry to disappoint you by putting Dynamax at the top, especially to you singles players watching. I'm personally really excited for terastallization, but I'm curious what you all think. Let me know in the comments below.